Okay, yeah, so the two presenters are myself and Metra. And again, I'll cover the kind of structural parts of what goes into building the system, but then Metra will cover the most important part of social media, which is the pictures and the videos that go with the posts. And I'll share a little bit more about the background for the two of us then and our work to build Young Mountain's T's social media presence. But in addition to doing Young Mountain, I'm also a venture catalyst with Oregon Rain, which I think everybody here knows. And Metra, do you want to briefly introduce what else you do besides Young Mountain?
Sure, yes. Hi, everyone. I have been a graphic designer and graphic artist for a while now. And I work, yes, as Laura said, for Young Mountain, but also I freelance and I work for the University of Oregon as a graphic designer. So yeah, nice to meet everyone.
Awesome. Okay, and just to give you a little bit of context for this workshop, we at Oregon Rain, what we do is we partner with Oregon communities to do three things. We help catalyze entrepreneurial ecosystems, which is a fancy way of saying we help cities support building cultures that support their small businesses. We help connect the people who start businesses to necessary resources that they need to grow their businesses. And overall, what we're trying to do is work towards the creation of more prosperous economies. And we very much focus on rural. Our work is only made possible by the support of all of our partners in this work, from cities to foundations to counties to private corporations and the federal government. Yes, thanks to all of them collectively supporting this work to support all of you that were able to do this. And then I'll have this again at the end, but if you are interested in reviewing these slides afterwards, feel free to just reach out to me by email and I can shoot them over to you. Okay, so as I was saying, Metra and I are two of the members that run Young Mountain social media presence, but we are actually two of the three members. So I thought it might be helpful just to start by sharing how we build our system so that you can see what elements you want to incorporate into building your own. I am responsible for each month coming up with the content calendar, which in something that we'll go over in a little bit, but coming up with what we're going to post about throughout each month. And that's how we organize ourselves, is we come up with monthly calendars of content. And then after Michelle writes the posts, I read through all the posts that she drafts and sign off on them to make sure they're good to go. And then I'm also the one who's responsible for responding to the comments and mentions and tags and direct messages that we get on the different platforms. Those activities take about 2 hours a week. Oh, we've got Bradley coming in as well, joining the call. And then Metra, she does the photography and video side of our work. She helps set up, prep, and take the pictures. She edits them after they're done, and then she prepares the files to get up on social media, and that takes roughly an hour and a half each week. And then finally, Michelle, who isn't able to join us, but a critical part to the puzzle, she's the one who actually spends the most time in the platforms. She drafts the posts, as I said, that we then approve. She then goes into another program that we'll cover called Later. That's the name of the program, Later, to schedule those posts out. And then we pay to have each one of our posts increased in reach. And so it's called boosting. And that's something that Michelle also takes. And so just to give you a snapshot, for us, this approach takes us collectively about 7.5 hours every week. So it's not an insignificant amount of time, but we do feel it's really essential to what we do. And so it feels like time very well spent. And then, yeah, to share that really, we didn't really have a formalized approach to a lot of this for a while. It wasn't until about February that we really dialed into systems, and that was with the support and guidance from a marketing consulting firm in Eugene called Muse Marketing. And so a lot of what we'll talk about today has come in the last 8 months of experience dialing these systems and getting them to be not only useful, but also manageable. And I feel like that's the key part to social media, is coming up with a system that puts you in a position to not feel like you have to stare at the screen, figuring out what creative thing you need to come up with each day, but also isn't so cumbersome that it takes you hours to run. So that's the context from which we're pulling our experience. And then, yeah, what I wanted to do is just give you a little bit of an overview of why social media matters. And it was pretty fun in getting ready for this presentation to go into the statistics behind social media and realize just how significant of a force this thing is. It's crazy that Facebook didn't start till 2005. And since then, almost half of the world have become active users on social media. There's 3.5 billion people as of January of 2020, and that was that was January. So it'll be interesting to see what the statistics are for the next year. Metra was actually saying like, oh, I thought there'd be more people, which I think is just a reflection that everybody is using some form of communication.
Sorry to interrupt, Raj. Could you ask Ellen to mute, because I'm finding it extremely distracting hearing her eating on the other side. And
yeah. Yeah, Ellen, would you be able to do that? If not, I can help you out if that's.
Is you need us to mute things?
Yeah, and I can do that for you. So I just muted you, Ellen, and if you want to come off mute at any point, you're welcome to. But now I need to figure out how to go back in the slides. Okay, cool. Yeah, so social media as a whole, it's a big thing. And people are spending not only are active on it, but they're active on it a lot. In the US, on average, people are spending 3 hours a day on social media. And on Facebook alone, more than 2/3 of all American adults are actively using it. So this is certainly the modern form of community, or at least one of them that people are on. As it relates to age, generally, the younger you go, the more people are on social media, which probably isn't a shocker of a statistic, but here's just so you have it. 9 out of almost 10 millennials are doing some kind of social. About 3/4 of Gen Xers and almost half of all baby boomers. But I think as it relates to business, this is perhaps why this is significant. More than half of people use social media to do some form of research of products. So this is the way a lot of businesses have switched to doing their marketing outreach to consumers. And in addition to that, just so we're all thinking about this correctly, the overwhelming majority of people don't use social media on desktops or laptops. They're doing it on their phones, on mobile devices. And the second half of the statistics is kind of interesting too. Almost 80% of total time on the social media sites occur on these mobile platforms. Hey there, Jana, welcome. We are just working through a bit of context for why social media matters. And social media, or as it's also known more often as just social, the reason that it's significant for businesses today, and the way that was very helpful for me to conceptualize the way to use it, is that more and more people are interested in interacting with people and not just brands. People want to know the voice and the personality behind the companies that they're interacting with. They want transparency into who is running the show. And social media is a really unique way to establish that kind of relationship, one where you can offer different types of credibility into what you're doing, and then also just become a more familiar presence to a lot of these potential customers that you'll be with. And then really what's kind of transformative about social media generally is it gives you an opportunity to talk directly to your customers, and perhaps even more importantly, for them to reach out and interact directly with you. And so it's this type of relationship that we want to be very thoughtful about how we go about building. And I know that somebody at the beginning of this said that they're looking for ways to sell, which is often how social media is thought of. However, it's not actually the best place to go to for generating direct revenue. Social media isn't really created to sell things, but is really a good spot to build your brand's awareness. So what social media does is help support you creating sales by making you more familiar to people. But if you're looking for ways to generate cash tomorrow by increasing sales, you might want to consider alternatives to social media first, like Oh, we got more people joining. Things like email marketing has been shown to be more effective at driving direct revenue. So sending out your monthly newsletter is an important and perhaps more directly revenue generating element of your marketing efforts. And then something like paid advertisements, which you can do on social, but not really what we'll be covering today. So just so we're all thinking about this correctly, when you're putting out posts out there, it shouldn't be an expectation that it's going to lead directly to sales. It will help support those efforts, but it's going to be more in a kind of creating the community of people that will be interested in your products rather than those who are buying directly. And that's because often, although people do research on social media for products, they're not necessarily in a buying mood in that point, in that moment. But just the same, it is very important to get on their radars. And now that said, there are ways you can generate revenue on social, and two of the ways to think about. One is called affiliate or influencer marketing. And this is kind of like selling on commission. So for people who have large following, this is an increasingly popular way that kind of independent celebrities, self-made celebrities are creating livelihoods for themselves, is that they'll promote other brands' products to their followers, and they get a discount code. If that discount code gets used on your website to generate a sale, they get a kickback or a small percent of a commission. We've started to do this a little bit and had mixed results, but we do know that from some of the larger brands out there that are growing really actively online, that affiliate marketing and building out essentially a sales force that are outside people is a really effective way to generate direct revenue from social. And then the other way to think about it is just traditional advertising that is you can do on social media as well. Of course, this costs money. So it's not something that you can expect. You will have to put money in to make money, and tracking the return on your ad spend is a really important part to assessing if it's worth your time or not. Happy to talk about this in another conversation, but this one is more focused generally on social media's primary role, which is on building your community. So really, when we think about social media, again, it's not just about making sales, but really about building your loyal fan base. And then the way you convert that fan base into customers, into paying customers, is where you draw on some of these other tools. And the other thing about all social media is that it remains the wild west of the internet. All of these platforms are continually changing and doing it quickly. In fact, just last week, Facebook had changed their algorithms in response to election-related activity. So the way that you can boost on there has changed, and this is not uncommon for things temporarily to be different and then change back. So it is something that you can expect to continually have to put effort into staying on top of. And it's kind of an interesting landscape in that there's new platforms that are always popping up. So as soon as you've sort of figured out one, you can expect that there's another one coming up. But that's okay, because there is a lot of crossover in the mentality of the way that you use these. And then the last thing is to say that while the information that we're sharing today comes from our experience, everyone uses and every business uses social media in slightly different ways, and therefore probably has slightly different insight to offer. And so really in all of this, like, these kinds of workshops are helpful in getting you going, but the real value will come when you're using it yourself and making it your own. So with that said, let's transition now into going into a little bit of a high overview of the two platforms we'll talk about, Facebook and Instagram. And to do that, let's start with setting the context, which is that these are two separate platforms, but they're both owned by Facebook. So really, it's just one company that we're talking about, Facebook, which is king, hence the throne, or queen. And it's helpful to know that, because if you're going to choose two platforms to begin your social media efforts on, these are the two largest and they're connected to each other, which makes it easier in some ways, because there's tools that they develop that integrate across the two, so that you can manage just one spot, the business manager, to use both of the platforms simultaneously. The biggest single difference between the two platforms is the age of the audiences that are using them. Um, the average age of Instagram users, anybody got a guess?
Under 30.
Under 30, was that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah, you're just right. It's 29.7 years old. So of course there's a distribution across ages, but yeah, it's a little bit under 30. And then what about the average age of Facebook users? Any guesses?
Oh, 60.
Not quite. It's 40.5. So I mean, they're not wildly separated, but there is a difference. And so you can think about the types of people that are beyond there. You're going to want to use the platform that's more appropriate for the audience that you're going to want to reach. And we'll talk about that and determining your audiences in just a second. With both of these platforms, it really comes down to making sure that you have really strong visuals to go with any post that you make. So for the typography part, that's why I asked Metra to come join us, because she's really good at doing this piece, but it really is essential. For Facebook, the photographs are important. So every post should have a good picture or a good video, although it's not required. That's different on Instagram, where it's not possible to post without having a picture or a video. So really prioritizing increasing the quality of what you're taking, either from photography or from a videography perspective, is probably, in my view, the easiest place to see a good jump in responses. And between the two, generally, our consultants tell us that videos are stronger than pictures in terms of generating engagement. Engagement being the way that people either like or comment on a post. But we all know that everybody's attention span is short and getting shorter. So you have to be able to tell really interesting stories in very short amounts of time. 7 to 10 second stories is the recommendation on Instagram. I think, Metra, we're just looking, right? The limit on Instagram videos is 1 minute.
Will it mute, Mike? I don't know.
So I'm gonna just do one thing real quick.
And that is, sorry, and that is the uploaded ones. I mean, in the main feed, if you do IGTV, Instagram TV, it's its own thing.
Thank you. Yep. And those are different ways you can post onto the platforms. So in terms of the absolute basics of getting your business onto the platforms, what we suggest you start by doing is just create a business account on Instagram and on Facebook and make these accounts separate from your personal ones. And that's really important, that you're not posting from your personal about your business, because just like with the banks, you want to have some separation between your personal life and your business. And because in the event that you want to, say, have somebody else get involved in running your accounts, you don't want to be giving them your personal account information. Or if you want to do something like run an ad through your account, you don't want that being done from your personal page either. That plus the analytics that you have in business accounts make it a really strong idea to keep them separate. So go ahead and first start by creating the business accounts on both Facebook and Instagram, and then install the business suite on your phone so you can manage them both. And then this is again because Facebook and Instagram are owned by Facebook. You can just use their one business suite app to run them both at the same time.
Raj?
Yeah.
The business suite, so I got confused and a friend told me to sign up for something called Later Advantage. Should I undo that and sign up for business suite? One of the advantages of Later is that I can do it from my computer, which is easier for me.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Later in a second. Later is a great program for scheduling out your posts. It's not actually a part of these platforms, sorry, but rather connected to them. So the business suite gives you the chance to do things like look at the analytics. So like how many people are responding to your posts, who's commented on them, and those kinds of things. So it gives you a deeper insight. Whereas Later is better for scheduling across platforms. So I think they both have important roles, but they're not the same. Does that make sense, Nora?
Yeah, thank you. And then Business Suite, can we use that on our computer? Because I mean, I've got all my pictures on my computer and stuff. It's just easy to drag them over. Would Business Suite work on a computer or just phone?
That's a good question. I haven't tried it on a
'Cause I'm
computer.
not a good phone typer.
Yeah, I mean, if you're on your computer, it's pretty easy to manage them from the platforms themselves. And I think actually that's built in. So actually, as we poke around here, this might become more clear. So yeah, I just want to show you, this is, so what I do to get to our Facebook page is first I just log into my personal account, and then you can see down here the organizations that have their separate business accounts that I'm affiliated with. So if we click into the Young Mountain account, here's what's going on. You've got your header picture, you put your logo for your icon, or you you can do something else, but we strongly recommend if you have a logo, that's a good place to put it. And yeah, this is just the overview of what the page looks like. It looks very similar in a lot of ways to a personal page. But you get a little bit more information because we're running ads right now. How many people have been reached by those, the number of ways that people are engaging. Engaging again is either commenting on a post or liking it. So yeah, either one of those contribute to the engagement statistic. And then you see how many people in the last week in the last month, the last 28 days, have how your followers to the page have changed. And so I guess we have 248 followers in the last month. So this is 16% increase over where we were. And then all of these posts that you're seeing here are things that we had scheduled out in later. So they just pumped through to both our Facebook and our Instagram from later directly. And so this is what the Facebook business side looks like. And just to show you on the Instagram side, this is the layout as well. Similar, you see that we're posting the same pictures, which have largely the same content, but not exactly. Like we slightly tweak what we write for each one of these, which is a recommendation because the way people, what they're looking for on the platforms is not necessarily the same because they've got, again, different audiences. And yeah, one of the increasingly popular things on Instagram are the stories, which I'll confess I'm a little behind the game in catching up to. And we just, I guess the one that we had just ended. But basically on Instagram, there's two types of posts. There's the pictures that you see here. And this one's an example of a video. You can see the little video icon up there. That's what tells you what's going on. Which are permanent. Once these are up, unless you choose to delete them, you're on your wall. In contrast, stories are things that show up for just 24 hours and then go away. And increasingly on Instagram, stories have become the more popular form of content creation. And let's go to somebody else's. We had one up, but we just, it must have just crossed 24 hours so that it stopped. Oh, look, Shopper Ridge. Let's see here. Chico Chai is another tea company down in Chico, California. And you can see, so the stories that show up, they're kind of just like quicker, less formal things that you can add through the Instagram platform, and it just continues to rotate to show you new ones. So I'm just going to keep coming back to Chico while we're doing this. But yeah, you can add slight labels or a little bit of information. And this is a really great way that if you don't want to have sort of the permanency of a post, but want something that's just kind of quick and fun to put it up, the tricky thing here is that, again, after 24 hours, they go away. So I think this is kind of catering to the increasingly short amount of time that people want to have new information, but it's kind of exciting because it's got the feel of you have to get this now before it's gone. And I saw a statistic just before I started this workshop that in 2017, there were 150 million stories that were created on Instagram. And in 2019, 2 years later, that number was 600 million. So stories are really where Instagram has been moving towards, at least the users on it. And increasingly, people say that, if you're not posting stories in addition to regular posting, there's a chance that people won't even see what you're putting out there. And the way you know if there's a story going on, if there's this kind of red-orange halo around the icon of the account. And you can see ours doesn't have one because the story that we're running just expired. So that's just what it looks like at the high level. I'm gonna now switch back into the presentation and go into a little bit about thinking about how you then use these platforms to actually be useful for you. And the starting point of all marketing, not just social media, and I would argue not only marketing, but all successful businesses, is really understanding who it is that you're trying to sell or provide services to. We call these our customer personas, which are also called target customers. And I know a lot of us on this call, we've talked about this in the past, but this is really getting outside of your head and getting into the head of the people that you're trying to do business with. And it begins with a fun exercise of just fleshing out in as much detail who it is that you think would be interested in your products. So I'm curious if anybody who's on the call now, who's gone through this activity, wants to come off mute and share their experience of who you would define as your customer persona or target customer. Anyone want to give it a go?
It's hard for John and Jess because a lot of people need our services.
Yeah, which is a customary starting point, but the more you can define it, the better it is. And I know you said in the past, like small business owners are one of the types of customers that you work with, right?
Absolutely. One of the target markets, people getting, off of the showroom floor and getting their products out there. If they need a logo or a banner, or poster, or sign, we deliver.
Yeah, and I think that process of continually refining your understanding of who the customer persona is that you exist to serve, the more satisfying and successful the marketing efforts that you do will be. So anybody else want to share theirs?
I'm happy to say that I think I'm marketing to women primarily, probably women very much like myself, women who are buying gifts largely either for themselves because they can't resist it, or for their sisters, their daughters, their friends, their mothers. So very much a sort of something appealing to women in a whimsical but also utilitarian manner, practical manner.
That's really great, Helen, because you also went deeper into talking about what they're going to use your products for as gifts for other women. And so hopefully that then begins to inform, as you think about what kind of content to post, what will resonate with them to make what you put out there interesting. So let me share an example. We at Young Mountain, we have 3 customer personas. We have one dominant one, who's the primary person that our content is being created for. And then we have 2 secondaries. And so I just put our dominant one here. And I'm just going to go through this because I want to show the level of detail that we included, which makes coming up with a lot of the social posts a lot easier. So this is Stevie, who is actually modeled after my sister, whose name isn't Stevie, but what we did was first come up with a description of who she is, then come up with a good stock photo so we have a visual to go off of, and then a name. And the more specificity you can give it, the more helpful it is. So Stevie is a liberal 39-year-old public health professor at Stanford. She makes a few pots of tea in her office, a comforting reprieve from the daily stresses and a ritual she looks forward to. Tea is grounding and something she often gifts to loved ones, kind of similar to Helen. Stevie loves to share a reason for pause, the warming sentiment and the beautiful packaging and flavors. She is well-traveled, energized by exploring local markets, artisan shops, street food stalls, and temples. She likes trying new wine varietals and enjoys the annual road trip to Sonoma with a bunch of her friends and with a bunch of her and her partner's closest friends. Stevie grows her own greens, culinary herbs, and tomatoes, and diligently tends to her indoor potted plants. Stevie's susceptible to good marketing, nice packaging, and good stories. High prices equate to quality. Because she's always working or on the go, Stevie shops on her devices, balancing the convenience of Prime with the personal touch of Etsy, and all her credit cards are saved on her phone. She's graduating out of flavored loose leaf blends, seeking more complex teas from high-end brands. High quality products with a purpose and a good story will turn her into a lifelong brand advocate. She keeps up with her favorite brands on Instagram and subscribes to, and occasionally reads, all their email communications. So you can see there's a lot of detail in here that you might think like, what the heck, why is this useful? But what it helps us do, like in discussing that she grows her own greens and that she diligently tends to her indoor potted plants, that informs a lot of the pictures that Metra ends up taking. We intentionally include plants because we know that our personas that we're going after, these are things that will resonate and bring our product into their orbit of familiarity and comfort level. We know that she likes to go to local markets. So if we also take pictures of tea with fresh vegetables from a farmer's market, we know that's going to speak to her in a way that just taking a picture of a tea won't do it by itself. And so really understanding the lifestyle of the target customer in as much detail as you can only makes it easier for you to then come up with the kind of content that will appeal to them. And it's actually a really fun and satisfying process. And then what we also did was put down what kind of our products that she would drink, where we think we can reach her most easily. Instagram and Facebook, you can see her on that list. So we know that these two platforms are important for us to reach her, and what it is that she's seeking in drinking tea. And you can see taste is one of the things, but there's also a lot of more philosophical or value-driven parts to her interests, and that's not accidental. So, yeah.
Is this exercise, did you do that just for your internal team? This isn't something that goes out, right? So like this, you would do this, and then based on that discussion and that description, you would then use that to sort of manage your social media and the information you put out.
Yes, this is very much an internal document that's helpful for our planning, but not something that we put out there. And in fact, the other two names of our target personas are the obsessive and the idealist. And we've often talked about like, oh, these aren't necessarily titles that people would be thrilled to be identified with. So it's helpful for us for planning, but it isn't something that we put out there very often. The only time we've included an external facing stuff has been for business plans when we submitted them for loans or to pitch competitions, or to other consultants, so they immediately have a sense of what it is that we're going after. And generally, what we found is that, yeah, having a strong understanding of who the target personas is, it's helpful for really every business decision that you make, because everything should be driven by these personas. And we chose 3. Other people have 4. Other people have 1. But we found 3 was a helpful number because it gives you enough flexibility to reach into different directions, because kind of similar to what Jess said about feeling like everybody's your target persona, we felt that initially as well, because everybody drinks tea. And when we were going to tea festivals, like we would pour tea for 10-year-olds to 90-year-olds. But you want something that's a little bit more specific so that you can kind of grab it and run with it. So once you've gone through that exercise of figuring out who your personas are, here's some steps to go in about putting together a content calendar for the holidays, or I mean, you could easily build a monthly content calendar into this. And that process has 5 steps to it. You start by determining what are the content pillars that you'll organize all the copy that you make around. And these are the themes that serve to anchor the content that you write. And again, this is driven largely by what you know will resonate with your customer personas. Like, what are they seeking in interacting with your product? Another thing you have to determine is how often you want to and can post. And I think this is one of the harder things for a lot of people, deciding how often they can post. And I think you should post at a rate that you feel like you can consistently maintain, because often consistency is going to be more important in the long run than just having short bursts. These are all marathons and systems that you put in place, not sort of quick things that you dabble with and then move away from. 2 to 3 times a week is a good starting point, or 2 to 3 times every other week could be a good starting point as well. But something that you feel is manageable enough to maintain. And these are the things that you plan out. In addition, you can always add more stuff, but it's nice to have a consistent kind of drumbeat to the creation of the content that you're putting out there. And then, yeah, then you actually plan the month out. And I'll show you on the next slide what ours looks like for an example, but you map out the different concepts for each post that you're going to do in order to appeal to the different content pillars that you've created. We map out the whole month at a time and then break that month down into weekly posting. So after you have the kind of high level concept, we write out the posts 1 week at a time. And then you schedule the posts using either something like the Business Manager, if you're just doing it on only Facebook or Instagram, or if you want to post to other platforms like Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, or TikTok, you can use something like Later or Hootsuite. And so this is the 5-part process. And here's an example of what it looks like in practice for us. So here at the top, we have our 3 personas. And we decided that, okay, because the Explorer is our dominant personality type that we're going after, we'll have 60% of the posts roughly aimed at this person, 20% going for this second persona, and 20% going for the third persona, roughly. And these numbers are pretty flexible depending on what we're doing. And then here are our content pillars. You can see that we have 6 of them. We have a tea of the month. We know that our customers come to us for education about tea. We know that because our brand is premised on sustainability, that understanding the sourcing and the transparency and the sustainability is another pillar for us. People are gravitating to tea because of the health and wellness benefits. So that's another one. That giveaways, we try and do 1 giveaway in partnership with another brand every month. And we'll talk about this at the end of the workshop, but this is a really helpful way to increase your following base by leveraging the following bases of other accounts. And then we try and share 1 update at least a month about just something that's going on to the team, because that's a kind of like the insight into what it looks like to build a small business that we want to put out there. And then I'm an engineer by training, so I like spreadsheets. So this is how we organize it. We kind of map out how much of each one of types of these content pillars we're going to do for each of these personas. And this month we were doing only 6 posts in the month. We were doing, that was when we were doing 3 every other week, which we ramped down intentionally for October so that we could kind of get ready for the holiday season. And so then, yeah, what we did is just map out the dates. We put the day of the week so we could remember for ourselves. We put the personas based on this. We put the content pillars based on these parts. And then we just wrote out the concepts. And this process, it probably takes about 1.5 hours to 2 hours once a month. So it's not that difficult, but it really creates the framework that helps make the posting really simple. And then so every other week, we just write out 3 posts. And these are the notes that we use to form them. Because we have another person who actually writes our posts for us. These are notes from Metra and me to Michelle that she then puts out there. And then she just schedules and through Later. We also include our newsletters just so we have a sense of all of the content that's coming out. This month, we also had a blog that looks like it got cut off at the bottom, but those are the 3 types of content that we're regular doing: our newsletters, social media posts, and blogs. So this is kind of a snapshot of what one would look like for October. And if you're looking to put one together for the holiday season, I might suggest you do like 1.5 months from like early November to mid-December, or even just mid-November to mid-December, because that's really when the holiday buying season is going on strong. Any thoughts or questions on the layout here?
Raj, I have a question. Can we get a copy of this because it's awesome?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll send the slides out. And yeah, we like to work in a spreadsheet, and every month we just create a new one. And so, yeah, I hope it'll be a good framework for, yeah, for you all, and certainly Jana, happy to share it. Okay, so that's how we determine what we're going to write. Now let's go to later to look at how we go about scheduling it. So I guess we'll come back to the step where Metra works for Magic to create the pictures. But this is what later looks like. This is that scheduling platform. And you can see up at the top the different accounts that we have linked up here. We have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. And you can see, hello, one second. I'm not sure what, oh, maybe it's because this is, you know, I don't use this as often, so I thought I'd be brave and trying to do a live demo. But okay, yeah, I don't know why. I think my computer is being slow to load it, but you can see that what you do is you put your pictures here, you grab one and just drop it into the slot of when you want it to go up. We would grab our copy from the content calendar here. So, you know, just copy from here and then drop it into here. If there's any people associated with the picture, if it's a giveaway or if it was, say, a picture that we're using from another person's account, we would tag them. And then here's an important part, particularly for Instagram, which you can see this is a post for, is that if there is a link to a website that you want to reference, then this is the feature that Instagram calls it, the link in bio. And then here's when you actually, down here's where you schedule the timing of the post. And you can post across multiple platforms at the same time, which is really the benefit of using this type of program. And there's other called Hootsuite. Yeah.
For that link in bio, I wasn't sure what that was, so I wasn't using it, but would we put the shop Fern Ridge?
Yeah, specifically perhaps like if you're talking about a product, you'd put the link to the product.
The link to, okay.
Right, so if you're talking about a specific cup that you made that day and you have like a 10-second video of you throwing it, you would say like, look at what's going to become the beautiful saucers that you can buy at Shop Fern Ridge or something. I wouldn't make it necessarily that salesy, but as an example, and then you can drop the link to the Shop Fern Ridge site that's for that product into the link in bio.
Okay, that's really helpful then. And so you wouldn't recommend just our merchant page, the actual product?
It depends a little bit, I think, on the post that you're doing, but generally, if you can get people to going to something where there's a kind of clear connection between the post and what the website is about, it's better. So yeah, generally we try, because we're trying to also sell through social, so we try to usually link it to products.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Raj, I know a lot of people choose to use Facebook instead of forking out for a website. My confusion is, when would you put more effort into your website and when into your Facebook promotion? And why is it important to have both if you're putting so much energy here into keeping up and putting new information onto your Facebook page? But then referring people back to your website. What is the fundamental difference as you see it between the two things, and what's one better for than the other?
Yeah, I guess the biggest difference is that your website is exclusively your space. So once somebody's on your website, you are controlling their experience. You're giving them a lot more information than you're able to on Facebook. And especially if you're trying to sell them, that's where you can actually sell stuff through. So you can give a lot more information about yourself and your products through your site. And yeah, ultimately, because we sell through our website, that's, if they're not on our website, we're not actually making a sale. As opposed to on a social media platform, Facebook or Instagram, where those are really, I mean, everybody else is there. So it's kind of like going to where everybody else is as sort of like how you get their attention, but then bringing them to the site so that we can give them all the information that they need to learn about us and our products. That has to happen on the site.
So the social media is more like a sort of fishing net.
I think that's a great
And
analogy.
you can catch people, and then you bring them back onto the boat for processing, which is your website.
Yes.
Is that?
If we're yes, in the fishing analogy, definitely. Metra, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you've covered it.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So again, this is later. This is how you would go about scheduling out the posts. And this, I think, is the game changer in making social media manageable, because then you don't have to go through that process, which we did for a couple of years, of just staring at the screen and thinking, oh my gosh, look at all these creative people. How do we come up with something? The trick is you plan it in advance, so you don't have to come up with things on the spot. Okay. And with that, yeah, I'll pass the baton to Metra to talk about photography.
Hi. So yeah, this part is specifically about photography, as video is, as Raj pointed out earlier, is also extremely important and popular, but there are a lot of things that, especially if you are combining websites, product photography in general, you want it for your website. If you have one, you want it for social media. It's important to have photographs that are static, then they're going to just be evergreen, as they call it. So they're going to be there and usable. You can zoom in, you can download. It's like photos are always relevant and a very important part of how you present yourself. As a very visual person, I was disappointed that I couldn't actually include visuals in this for you, but I have kind of a few high-level points that we can go over, and some resources at the end for everyone to kind of at your leisure. You can, I really recommend going deep into them, looking at them, because there's something for everyone, and all our needs are different for social media and for just general products implementation and photography. So it will be really useful for everyone to find something in there for themselves. Generally, for having good product photos, we need the basic tools. Digital cameras are very highly recommended and usually better than the phone cameras, because phone cameras have come a long way, but especially depending on the model and all of that, they have a lot of shortcomings as far as not being able to capture the same range of light and color that an actual camera can. But it's still a good option. It's just, as we get to it later, just getting to know your tools better so that you can use them better. Digital cameras don't have to be fancy. If you don't already have one, you can buy used ones, which are actually can be really in good shape. And if the new ones are too pricey. Another really essential thing that we've found, and I'm loving more and more, are backdrops and flat lay surfaces. So these are these kind of like surfaces like this that have a texture. So it kind of looks like it's matte. It has a little sheen on it right now, but it's generally pretty matte. They're waterproof and wrinkle free, and you can kind of use them to convincingly create. Oh, sorry, Raj, did you?
I stopped screen sharing so they could see those backdrops.
Oh, gotcha. Thank you. Can you reshare, because I was kind of reading them?
Could you show one or two more of those backdrops just so people see what they are?
Pardon?
Could you show one or two more of those backdrops?
Yeah, definitely.
These blew my mind when you realize, like, this is.
So I showed you this one. Like, there are all these different types, and Etsy is a very good source for these. And these are kind of rigid. You can find them in different ways, but like this is like a marble kind of thing. And they're high quality photos that are printed on these. And once you have them behind something at a distance or under something, and it's kind of a little blurred out or even not, it looks really convincing. I thought it would look super fake, but it doesn't. It can actually help create a lot of variety when you do product photography. So it's not always the same table that you're shooting things on, and kind of pretend that you're in different spots, and kind of have variety. Thank you. And then the last one is a tripod. So generally tripods are very important because no matter how stable we think our hands are, especially when making videos, the slightest amount of shakiness will make the video go wobbly. If you have lower light and you therefore have to like, yeah, it can make the photos become blurry. So it's very, and if you do flat lay, which is, you know, the style that you shot things from top, which is very popular right now, it's very important to have a tripod because you really have to rig something to get a good distance above everything to be able to shoot it. Tripods can be pretty large and hefty, and they can be telescoping, so you can kind of make them taller and all of that, which is great. There are also these small tripods that I'm sure you have seen. They're for like iPhones and for phones, smartphones, and you can even detach this and attach your camera to it. But they're kind of flexible, so they're really fun because you can attach them to like a chair or a branch or something. It can be very flexible if you want to have something that is small and light and can kind of handle something like that. So those three things I definitely, well, of course, they're the kind of essentials to start doing this. If we can go, yeah. And then these are the optional ones. Light boxes generally are for smaller products. So it's like basically a box with one side that is open, and usually there's some sort of a diffused fabric that is matte, so the light comes through, or sometimes they're completely matte and you can kind of use lighting from the front, but you can put your item in there and it kind of stays contained, and it's useful for kind of smaller item photography. Studio lights, small or large, again, the idea is to help you, if especially you're inside, help with the lighting. It's good for them always to be diffused, so you're not spotlighting anything and creating glare. Reflectors are those also very helpful if you have low lights to, let me show you this. This will be dramatic.
Everybody able
These,
to see Metra?
Pardon?
I just want to make sure everybody can see Metra.
Yes. Which are these sheets that are silver or gold usually, and they actually surprisingly reflect light back. So if you put it on one side, it bounces light back off of it. So you end up like not getting a lot of contrast and shading on one side. And they're very cheap, so I do recommend those. Ring lights are another thing that are very helpful, especially now. They're kind of look like this, and they work, they attach to, you can just, they have USB connections, you can attach it to your computer. The problem with these is that they kind of have to be attached to a source of power. So you can have like one of those mobile, you know, the little batteries, what do I call them? Energy banks or whatever to carry this around. But basically this is very useful because it can be attached to the tripod, it can be attached to the top of your camera, and it creates this diffused light, which is also very helpful to, it's very cheap and economic way to create a good lighting condition for your product. These are optional ones, but I do recommend you look into them because I think you can find something that suits you. Thanks, Rush. Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. So now I'm just going to kind of go through the top 14 tips. Again, there's an absence of visuals, but basically get familiar with your camera and or smartphone. They all have limitations and capabilities. So while phone cameras have come a long way, they can't capture the same range, but if you recognize and understand the space that you're using for your photography and the lighting conditions and all of these, with all these tools that I mentioned, you can create a way that you can have the best photos for you. The second one is take advantage of natural light as much as possible. I'm very big on that because really, ultimately, all these beautiful, bright images that you see that you just want to like for food or for products and everything that you just like, it just draws you in and it's very uplifting. They use natural light. And so if you can do that, if you can do outside, and be careful with natural light because again, the key in all of this is diffused lighting. You don't want anything to bounce light too much off of it to get a lot of blown out, overexposed areas. So you want it to be diffused. So they usually on cloudier days, actually, it's very good light outside and it saturates the color, so you get really good results. If you're inside, if you have a nice window, I would set up close to that. And again, use the lighting sources or reflectors to compensate. Avoid using flash. I generally I always advise against it, because unless it's in the hands of some very experienced fashion photographers, flash most of the time it clears a lot of glare and a lot of unnecessary just exposure that doesn't help your imagery. Shoot for minimal edit. So basically you want to, from the beginning, get a good picture. You don't want to rely on editing afterwards. Editing is important for removing minor flaws, or like retouching and lightening things a little bit more, or like doing minor things. But you can't, if an image doesn't start off strong, no amount of editing will help it make it better. So and in order to do that, there are a lot of YouTube classes, actually, that whatever platform you're working in, there are a lot of free editing tools that you can use online, or you can download to your computer or on your phone. There is a resource list at the end, and I have a list of what's possible there. And there are a lot of YouTube classes that are free. And once you pick something that you like and works for you, or you think it's a good one, or if you just want to generally get an idea which one is better, I would try the YouTube classes to familiarize yourself with that. Composition of your photos is very important. There's a lot of basics that are super easy and fun to figure out, like how to frame everything, how many things to have in a frame, where to place it, what angles, all of that. Again, there are multiple links for that in resources. Always take multiple shots, as many as you can, because you don't want to overwhelm yourself, but you want to have a good amount to kind of look through and see, okay, this one, I have 5 that are really good. And you don't want to have to go back and redo anything, because that's really painful when you have set everything up and done all of that work, and then you have to go back and redo it because everything you took just doesn't look as good as you were hoping. Thanks, Rush. Can you pass the...
Yep.
Point 8 is prep your products before you shoot. I found that the hard way when I had started doing product photography, that I would just not really pay attention. There was a smudge on it, or there was a wrinkle or something like that. It was all this fuzz. And then I would just take the photographs, and the photographs looked great, but I was like, oh man, this looks really dirty. So I had to like go in Photoshop and again, it takes a lot of time, and sometimes it just isn't as good. So just make sure that you clean it, iron it, make sure the labels are straight, anything that is about that needs like in its best form possible before you start it. And if you miss little things, of course, you can always use some cleaning tools to clean them out, but it'll make your life easier. Props are great to enhance and to kind of like those backdrops, create variety, or actually help explain your item, help explain how you use it, how, kind of like maybe kind of show sizes and dimensions, because you have things that are familiar next to each other. Because ultimately, what we want to do with these photos is because people are not there to touch them or see them or eat them, the best way we want to show the product details to them. So it's not just a beautiful image, it should also be a very informative image. And these props can help do both of those things. But remember that the main focus should always be on whatever your highlight product is. So the props shouldn't overshadow what your main product is. And on that, what I was saying, to stage the photographs to deliver the most information possible. So showing off features from different angles, how it functions, if it comes in a package, what it looks like inside and out of it, things like that. Developing style consistency. Just generally, as we upload things more and more onto the feeds on Instagram or Facebook, as you kind of look at them as a whole, like as you fill them up, see how they look side by side, and that will kind of help you see, oh, these shapes and sizes are all over to horizontal, you know, a bunch of square, a bunch of vertical, so they're kind of clashing. So it'll kind of give you a feel over time how to be more and more consistent, so that you have, again, variety, but it seems cohesive. And then point 12 is interesting. Actually, I want to kind of go back on one of the earlier slides where Raj was showing the times that we spend on things. The 1.5 hours that I was saying is not for, is actually for each setup for one project. So if I want to like take a we want to like show this cup in this particular image, this one, just to focus on this, would take me somewhere between 30 minutes to an hour and a half, depending, and this is the whole process, setting it up, taking the photographs, sorting the photos, editing the photos, getting it ready for all these different sizes and platforms. So each of those, so there are weeks where, and this is why I love these calendars, because if I have to do 5 of these, then suddenly half of the week I'm spending just like, you know, fiddling around with these. So it's really nice to, set yourself up in a way that as time goes by, you become faster and faster and spend less and less time. And one of those ways is to experiment with repeatable setups. So when you know your lights and your placements and things and angles that work, even you can still have variety, but it will take you much less time to set it up as you go by. For example, we wanted to shoot a video, which was from top-down video. And we had to rig up this whole thing, like on top of a chair that was, you know, kind of looking down. And then it takes a lot of times 2 people to do this. So I would recruit, you know, people around to just come hold something like the reflector, or just like, you know, help you with that. I would definitely count on other people. It helps a lot. But if you can't, that's okay, but it's really helpful. And then get inspired by the brands that you love. That's always a really cool thing generally, to just see what you like when you look around. Oh, I love this photograph. I like how they're doing this. I like how this particular, you know, clothing is really hard to photograph in a way that shows everything. And so yeah, just see what other brands are doing that you like and how it's working for them. That will also help you figure out how that will apply to you and your product, and getting just inspired by other people's works, and then creating your own unique way of doing it. You can just create Pinterest boards or print them out, or however that it helps to have it in front of you and remind you how that you want to incorporate those. And lastly, get the right sizes and dimensions for the social platforms. This one is, we have a running document for all of these platforms of what the dimensions and sizes that are acceptable are. Generally for Facebook and Instagram, square is your safest bet, because they both work with that well. But Instagram prefers vertical if you're going outside of square. Facebook prefers horizontal. So if you don't want to create multiple versions of something, then I would go with square. But then if you do pins, or if you do anything else in other platforms, then they all have their own specs. If you do videos, it's a whole other ball game. So there are a lot of resources for figuring this out. You can go to all the sites themselves. They all have their specifications. And I recommend creating a sheet for yourself with all the latest and checking on them frequently, because they do change, to make sure that you're always up to date. Because ultimately, this will also help you upload good quality images that load fast, because they're not large or like the wrong, you know, size. And again, because it loads fast, it creates the user experience much better. And the next slide, which is also, I think, at the end, I have all these links for you. So it's like major things that I thought would be helpful. The social media image sizes, that person claims that this is always up to date. And so far it has been, so I included it there. Generally, photography how-tos. The second link is on a site that actually sells these sheets that I showed you, the backdrops. However, they're very expensive there. I wouldn't buy there. Etsy's a much better resource for those if you want to get them. But they do have really good tips and tricks generally, and for photography, for product photography and social media photography. Some composition basics, editing software that there's a whole list for you to choose from. Generally, if you want to know more about size and resolution, which is an important thing if you want to have good quality photos out there. And then a couple more links about general e-commerce and social media and videos. Yeah, and that was my spiel.
Awesome. Cool. Well, then, just to bring this all back and to bring it out of the very technical to the more mundane high level, I want to wrap up with some tips. Okay, and quick tangent. The reason we call these warm tips is because Metra and I think I explained that, well, we're engaged, and so we live together, and we recently bought mouse traps. Humane mouse traps that are intended to catch the mice without killing them. And they came with this like description of how you should use them. And it was beautifully broken English. And one of the sections was warm tips. So here we go. Warm tips #1 for all social posts that you put out there. This one is the onerous one, but it is a good practice to respond to every single comment, direct message, or tag that you receive. And this is because, again, the whole point of all social media is to help build the community and the following. And by showing that you're a responsive and reliable communicator, it just puts you in a strong position and represents your brand well. Warm tip #2, do collaborative giveaways with partners who ideally have a larger following base than you. And so the way that this could work is you find another brand that's doing something related to what you're doing. Say, if you were a potter, you might do something with a type of food that could go in the pottery. Or if you were maybe for a graphic design firm, maybe some of the brands that actually have used your design work in what they make. And the idea is that both brands place the same post saying, if you follow both brands in the next week and tag a friend, then you'll be entered into a raffle to win whatever it is that you're offering. And that way, basically each brand is opening up its following base to the other companies, and you gain a whole bunch of followers in the process. And they're pretty fun. They do take some work to put together because you have to coordinate the photography of whatever the giveaway products are so that you have one shot with both brands' stuff. But it's a really effective way to increase your following size and reach. The one thing is that they do have rules for the way that social media giveaways are intended to run. And so don't forget to include a rules page on them. And if you are interested in what those look like, we have that in the resources guide, or you can check out pretty much any giveaway that's run by a legitimate company has these giveaway rules posted. The third tip is try putting a little bit of money into one of your posts to increase the amount of reach that you have, which is the number of impressions, the number of people that see the post. And then also you can optimize these boosts for different things. One is reach, the other is engagement. And this is using Facebook's algorithms, which you don't have to monkey with. You kind of specify who you're trying to reach and what you want them to do. And you'll see quite a jump in the way that people respond. And this is like a little bit of the weirdness of social media, because ultimately these are companies that this is how they make their money, is through ads. But it's one of these systems that if you really do want to develop this as something that is intended to build your company, you should have a budget for, and it's kind of a pay-to-play system. So yeah, try it. You don't have to put a lot and you don't have to do it often, but just play around with it so you get familiar with the idea of what it takes to boost. Okay, so that's it. If you please feel free to email me if you like these slides. And with that, I will stop my screen share. And yeah, we can turn it over to questions.
I'm wondering if you have an idea, just generally, let's say you go back to February to today, let's say you didn't have COVID and everything was kind of normal. What percentage increase do you think you see now that you're using all these techniques, as opposed to if you just stayed where you were before February?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Nora, because that's one of the tips that I had that I took off, which is to track your numbers. So at the beginning of every month, to write down how many followers you have. Just you can put it in a simple spreadsheet. It takes less than 30 seconds. And look at how that changes over time so you can see how the activities you're doing, what impact they're having on your follower base. Ours has absolutely taken off since we started doing this. We had less than 1,000 followers on Instagram, and now we have almost 8,000. And same with Facebook. I think it's about 3,000 now, and it was in the low 1,000s prior to that. So we have seen a pretty noticeable jump in the months that we've been doing it. I think the two central parts to that has just been consistent. Well, three parts has been consistency. So we are every single couple of days, there's a new post coming out. The quality of what we posted has risen with Metra's dialing in with the photography, and then also the content being very tailored to the personas. And then I think the last part is also boosting. We pay $15 per post, which adds up for sure. And that's per platform. So if we post the same thing to two platforms, it's $30. So we have a budget for that, but it has certainly helped to increase the reach. And it has, we've seen, led to sales that we wouldn't have otherwise had. A number of wholesale customers have reached out because they saw us and wanted to learn more. It's a little bit tricky. You wish that you could make a direct line between like doing this and then this sale, and it's not always that clear, which kind of folds back to the whole point of social is more about brand awareness than anything else. But it's kind of part of the way business works now that you have to be active on there if you want to grow.
Thanks.
Particularly if you have a consumer product. I should say it's a different scenario if you're selling to other businesses. Cool. All right, well, we know that was a lot. And if you're looking for one or two things to start for in the holidays, I would suggest just starting with developing a content calendar for the busy season, say a week before Black Friday to mid-December, figuring out who you want to target, what you want to post, and then setting aside a couple hours to first develop the content calendar, and then a couple hours another later to do all the photography that you want to do to include in it. And just give it a shot and know that this is a process that will improve with time. But it's really important just to get the ball rolling in a fun, manageable way for you and enjoy the process.
Thank you, Raj.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks you guys. This was really, really helpful. I mean, I'm not ready for everything just yet. I'm just starting out, but it kind of gives me a path to walk down.
Yeah, it's very motivating, isn't it?
Yeah. And the first part is to create separate business accounts on both platforms. That's the starting point. Okay, well, awesome. So yeah, if you're interested in the slides, please just email me. I'll put my email in the chat one more time. And otherwise, oh, that's not correct. Otherwise, we'll be around and in touch. And yeah, excited to cheer for you all as you take steps.
Thank you, Metra. Thank you, Raj.
Both very much indeed.
Yeah.
Bye for now.
Everybody. Bye.
All right. Thanks for your time.